Hello, everybody, and welcome back to GrindCraft, where today I thought I'd focus on kind of giving you an introduction, a summary of what this world is. So this isn't a normal update video. We'll get back to update videos a little bit later, because I actually do have some updates to talk about already, but that'll happen in a later video. But the GrindCraft update number 3 got a fair amount of traction, so I thought I'd do sort of an introduction into what this world is. There are a lot of streams and videos from GrindCraft in the backlog, so you can absolutely find a lot of information about what GrindCraft is, how it works, how it's worked in the past from those videos, but it would take you a lot longer than just watching this one. So hopefully this one, this video provides what you need, especially since I got at least one comment saying, what the heck is this? And I imagine a number of people watching the video thinking, what the heck is this crazy guy doing digging out huge holes in his world? So first, just as a general concept, GrindCraft is meant to be grindy work, and largely for me that the enjoyable grindy work that I like is digging these big holes. And as a bit of extra background, the way that I came by this kind of concept was in MC Legends Season 1, which was a very little known limited run series that basically had me and a few other streamers on this server that they were running that had MCMMO on it, and it was meant to be basically just, you know, a survival multiplayer server, an SMP Let's Play. Like, it was meant to be all of us sort of interacting and coming up with content, and for the most part it worked, though there were some issues, and that's largely the reason why I'm not on that server anymore. It felt like I was on an SMP to try and be on an SMP, but I ended up kind of just doing my own thing. And one of the things I ended up doing was digging a witch farm perimeter. Now, there wasn't necessarily any reason I needed to do this. I didn't have an overriding need for redstone or glowstone or anything like that. Like, I didn't need the farm, but it was an interesting project, so I was like, well, let's try to build this witch farm. And I built sort of the actual mechanism for the witch farm, and then I started digging out the perimeter, and I was like, oh well, this is way more fun than any of the rest of the stuff that I've been doing, so let's just focus on this. And that's what I did. When that server closed down and I was left not necessarily having an outlet for my big dig sort of itch, I waited a little while before coming into this world instead, and starting to dig out the first chunk, or the first area. And as I expanded and as things changed, I had to adapt. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit in this one. And I realize that I've been rambling for a few minutes. I'm trying to wait until it's nighttime so I can sleep. Anyways, one of the things that's changed that I can talk about quickly is the addition of deep slate. So as you can see from the map, even there's sort of this cross pattern, right, of holes that are already dug out down to y equals 0. And then you can see that I've started digging out deep slate, holes in the deep slate, and they are slightly smaller. So let's talk about that quickly. The way that I was working initially with these quarries was by using beacon radiuses as the sort of the base unit. So I put, for example, a beacon at 0, 0, at the coordinates 0, 0, and I said, I'm going to dig 50 blocks in each direction from this beacon, and I'm going to use that as the basis for my first quarry. So that's this sort of central area here, if you can see that. That central area of the larger cross pattern. When deep slate came out, that was more difficult because I had to spend a lot longer mining out deep slate, and it took me longer to kind of make progress, and I thought that wouldn't work. So instead what I did was I put the beacon at chunk 0, 0. So that's this chunk, this center chunk with all the glass platforms in it. And I dug out one chunk at a time. I started in at the 0, 0 chunk, and I dug out in a spiral pattern, expanding as I went and moving things down as I went, because all of my base was at the bottom of this initial cross pattern. So when I started digging out down to deep slate, I had to move all that stuff. And initially I just moved it temporarily out to further out, farther away from where I was digging the deep slate out. But then eventually I just moved it down into the base of the deep slate quarry. Now obviously you can see there's not a whole lot left down here, but we'll get to that. Anyways, as I continued digging things out, I made space for this area, and this area is sort of a legacy area at this point because it doesn't have the I was about to say there's not any I guess I did clear out all the items from under the bedrock, so that's good, but it doesn't have, it has this glass platform at the first bedrock level, and that's not how I want to do this world anymore, but that is something for a later video. However, this area is for all of my farms, automation, and my villagers, obviously. So the villagers are useful for getting golden carrots, which I use for food, as you can see. They're also useful for getting all this glass. There are a number of librarians with glass trades, and I use those pretty prolifically. There is a mob farm here, which is pretty productive, though I honestly, looking back on it, wish I had designed it slightly better. As you can see, there's a number of mobs that are stuck down here, and I have to come down. I have to come through and clear them out pretty frequently, so that I wish I had designed that better. That mob farm provides both arrows for my personal use, as well as gunpowder for creating rockets, which I use for getting around, and a number of other things, which I mostly just store. I don't necessarily use the other outputs. You can see here there is also a sugarcane farm that is also important for creating firework rockets for flying around. Here we have a kelp farm, which is useful for getting unlimited fuel. Obviously, we smelt down the dried kelp, and we create dried kelp blocks, which is then used in this area. This is a cactus farm in 4 chunks. You can see each layer has 8 by 8, so 64 total cacti in each layer, and I think there's about 8 layers here. Anyways, this feeds into an XP smelter, which, if you're not familiar, smelts cactus into green dye. The green dye is then loaded into 9 stacks here, 5 stacks here, and 1 stack in the furnace for a total of 15 stacks of cactus smelted, which is roughly equivalent to full durability of a netherite pickaxe when it comes to XP. So I take the 15 stacks of cactus, or green dye rather, and I bring them back up here. I have a little staging area here where most of my items get stored. This wall is for green dye. So whenever all these are full, I take them up to a more permanent storage space, and that's that. So that's sort of the automation part. Since we were just talking about storage, let's talk about storage. Initially, when I was playing the game and I was just digging out stone, I would store, initially, when I hadn't dug out anything yet, I would store most things at the surface because that's just what I had available. After I cleared out the first beacon radius, the first 101 by 101, so this area, I started storing things at the base of the quarry. So I would have chests sort of lined up and organized, and I would put things in them. And if I had a large number of a resource, I wouldn't necessarily store it because I didn't have space for it. I just kind of, stored what I needed. And that included, ores, it included dirt, I think, for the most part. It included ingots, it included plants, trees, wood, all that sort of good stuff that you need in early game, but not necessarily large quantities of, say, stone or granite or andesite or whatever. As the base evolved, as I cleared out more space, I had more room to create an automatic sorter system. And that happened after I cleared out this sort of next beacon radius area. I started creating sorter modules that lined sort of the exterior of this first beacon radius, the central area. And as I cleared out this beacon radius, I built more sorter modules. And, well, it kept expanding, except that only ever had, I think, 20 double chests for each kind of item it might even have been 10. It was a relatively small number of chests for any specific item, which meant that as I was clearing out, you know, huge amounts of stone every time I entered the world, most of that stone just got deleted. It got tossed into lava. So at this point now, as you come up to sort of the bulk storage areas that I have now, that I'm using, where I'm using barrels full of shulker boxes, you can see I have 28 full barrels of full shulker boxes of deep slate. But I think the next layer, oh, almost fell. The next layer is andesite. I think this is stone probably, right? No, that's tough. Well, one of these is stone, and it's nowhere near as large as the deep slate, though I have mined significantly more stone in this world. Maybe it's this one. Let's see. No, sugarcane. Well, shoot. Oh, there you go. See, only 2 barrels of shulker boxes full of stone. And that's, you know, that's wild, because I've mined so much more stone in this world, but that's because I wasn't storing any of it. I was deleting most of it back when I had that small sorter system. So as when Deep Slate came out and I had to, you know, once again move everything, remove that entire sorter system, and, you know, finally put myself at the bottom of the Deep Slate quarry, I started doing things differently. I started storing things in little chunks. So each chunk would have a different item that it was storing. And at the bottom, once I got to the bottom of the quarry, I would clear. I would put down the little glass floor that you can still see over in the automation area, and I would put down barrels. I would put down barrels and fill them with whatever material was supposed to go there. So, for example, I had a chunk filled with barrels that only had deep slate. I had a chunk filled with barrels that only had stone. A chunk filled with barrels that only had dirt. You know, there was a bunch of different areas where I would store different things. But that became unwieldy, largely because I needed to completely clear out the glass that was in this area if I ever wanted to complete my bedrock breaking project. So I didn't have available to me all the surface area that I was clearing anymore, because I needed to clear out not only this chunk if I wanted to clear this chunk of bedrock, I also had to clear the adjoining 8 chunks, because as I got to the edges of this chunk, all the glass that was there in the adjoining chunks would get destroyed by the TNT. So rather than do that, I just started clearing everything out from these chunks. I moved everything over to this side and to these sort of glass platforms in the sky, and I started clearing out bedrock. And now I've also got all these shulker boxes, because at some point I had built a shulker farm that worked okay, and I was able to get enough shulker boxes that I could store everything in them. And so now I've got this sorter module that automatically loads everything into shulker boxes, which is super handy. And I'm able to store these things, and see now there, I've got another barrel worth of stone shulker boxes, which is fantastic. I can use these to sort of compress my storage, and I don't have to worry so much about first manually sorting things, which is what was happening when I had just barrels of things at the bottom of chunks. But also, I don't have to worry so much about constantly keeping on top of my storage, because it's not so small anymore. It's compressed now into these shulker boxes, which is fantastic. The only thing I have to worry about manually dealing with really is this chest, which has all of the junk that's not sorted yet, and I probably should be sorting sand, as an example. And I just kind of have to make sure that that doesn't get swamped with too many items, but that's not too difficult to do. So I think that's a good trade-off. Let me just quickly there we go. Now, actually, really quickly, after having slept, I'm going to completely negate the necessity of that, and we're going to go into the Nether, because the Nether is both another project that is worth mentioning, but also a bit of a time capsule. So if we come here, you can see the Nether looks much like the Overworld. So we come up here. Yeah, the Nether ceiling is not super modified. In fact, what the heck is that? That needs to get removed. But there's a whole bunch of open space here. I've cleared out, once again, this is basically a beacon radius, and I've cleared out the entirety of it. And if you come over here, there is another beacon that is set up, and I haven't done any work on this since the last video, but we are working on getting this lava lake filled in so that I can clear out another 5x5 chunk area in the Nether. Now, the reason I said this is a time capsule is, this is what my storage in the overworld used to look like. I haven't updated this storage yet. So, this is just barrels filled with 27 chunks of basalt each. Over here is just barrels filled with 27 chunks of netherrack each. And you can see that these fall along chunk lines. So each chunk has a different thing that it's kind of dedicated to. In some chunks, it's stuff that doesn't need its own full chunk, like ores. That's gilded blackstone. That's nether quartz ore. Over here, I think, is ore outputs. Oh no, these are mob drops. So blaze rods, magma creams, gas tiers, stuff that you only find in the nether. Over here, I think, is ore outputs. Yeah, nether quartz, glowstone dust, netherite scrap. There's all kinds of stuff like this. So it's stuff like this that is kind of on its way out. At some point, I'd like to move all of these items into their own storages in the overworld, and I'd like to incorporate them into the bulk sorter so that stuff like netherrack and blackstone and basalt can be automatically sorted and put into shulker boxes, so I don't have to worry about keeping them, you know, in these barrels anymore. Because like this is not even, this is what 1, 2, 3, 4, I think these are 10 by 10, so 10 times 4, this is roughly 40 barrels worth of blackstone. This could fit in two barrels of shulker boxes. That would significantly compress the storage that I need. So that's something I'd like to do, but in order to do that, we need to find a place to put it. And to that end, yes, pun intended, let's take you over here. Because this is where sort of the final form of storage, I think, is coming together. And I want to make sure that you all understand this, because this is something that I'm going to share in the update video as well, but this is how the world has always evolved. I just keep coming up with different things that I want to do. So if we come over here, up top here you can see the remains of an Enderman farm, which is not working anymore. It seems the Endermite in the minecart died. So the Endermen still spawn up here, but they do not chase this Endermite anymore, so that's kind of useless. And probably I'll tear it down at some point, because look at all those iron blocks. I could really use those. But down here, this is a set of glass platforms that I've started building. And you can see that this is sort of a familiar situation. Yes, this is barrels full of deep slate. Some of you eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed that in the last video, when I was talking about my deep slate storage, there were something like 32 barrels filled with shulker boxes of deep slate. Not anymore. Now, a bunch of them have shown up here in this new storage system. So I am kind of stepping backwards in one way, but I'm also stepping forwards in that, like, this is an area that I will never have to visit. Like, I'm not going to come out here and be in this area. This chunk is never loaded. It's just here to exist and to store things. And I think that this is worthwhile, because this significantly, like, this removes a bunch of items from my main base. It doesn't, like, those things don't have to exist in my main base anymore. It frees up a bunch of shulker boxes. So, like, this is, I'm sorry, I have to make this joke. These are all 12 by 12, so that's gross. So every time I come here, I free up another 27 shulker boxes. So 144 plus 18. So we've freed up something like 162 shulker boxes that can be used now in the main base for sorting and transport of items, as opposed to just for compression of storage, which isn't necessary when you can just dump a bunch of barrels in the end. I think this is a far better use of our space and our time. And I think it also just kind of appeals to me from an organizational standpoint. So I think that's worthwhile doing, and I think I'm going to expand that to other items as well. As I start to learn sort of like what I have a lot of, I'm going to start moving those items into the end, and hopefully in the future, as I've already started doing with deep slate, like whenever I see 27 shulker boxes in this chest, I just take them to the end. I don't go up to the deep slate storage anymore. I just take them to the end. And I think that that's what we can do with all of these in time. So I might do that with stone, for example. But that is sort of a future project. Now, really quickly, just before we close, I do want to make sure that you all understand some of the quirks of this server, as well as just how I play the game. And there are a few, not too many, but there are a few things that I think are quality of life, upgrades that I thought were worth doing, even though they somewhat modify the way the game works. The first is MCMMO. Now, if I just land so I can type safely. MCMMO is a mod, basically a server-side mod, that allows you to gain experience in skills. So, for example, here you can see I have excavation 504, fishing 360, herbalism 1000, mining 1897. You can tell what I spend most of my time doing. Now, all of these skills have benefits. So, for example, I'm using the mining skill to quickly break blocks in the deep slate quarries, because deep slate is very slow to mine. When I use the mining skill super breaker, it is instant mine, so I can clear out a lot of deep slate very quickly. I am using the herbalism perk, farmer's diet, to get more saturation out of my golden carrots. I'm using the woodcutting skill, tree feller, to quickly clear large trees from the area around my quarries. All of these things, they do modify the way that the base game is played, and they do give you benefits, but they also take a lot of work to level up. So like the woodcutting skill, it took a long time for me to cut enough wood to get the tree feller ability. The mining skill, it took me a lot of mining to get the ability to quickly mine deep slate. And so all this stuff is additional work, and it is it's difficult, but it gives you a reward. And I think that that's worth doing. I think that's a worthwhile change to the game, and I think it kind of exhibits a love that I have for RPGs, that I've always had for RPGs, that I think I just wanted to bring into Minecraft in a way. And I've experienced MCMMO in the past, and I was able to add it to my server, so I did. And it adds an enjoyment for me to the game, which is great. The second thing I want to mention is the thing in the upper right corner. You see that I have a mini map, and sometimes I zoom in on it just to see sort of a wider area. And we're saying you can zoom out, and you can zoom in, and you can zoom out slightly, and you can zoom in slightly, and all that. But this is Zero's mini map. I want to be clear, and there's also Zero's world map, which I sometimes use to kind of get a picture of my place in the world. And you can see over here roughly is where the end portal is, I think. Or no. Yeah, it must be. I know it's in a savanna. I think it might be over here. I thought it was next to an ocean. Anyways, there's different things that are kind of around the spot. This village used to be somebody's base. All that stuff. But yeah, the map mods are not super useful ultimately, because if you update the game or if you change devices, the map just gets deleted. So I do have a book in here of important coordinates. Right now, all it has is the end. In the end, the shulker farm. But there are some other things that I probably should put in there, like the end portal, just in case that nether portal gets broken. I know I've had to repair it before, so it'd be probably a good thing to do. But yeah, there's a few things that I could probably put in there before I forget them, because I am getting older. And okay, maybe not that old, but I am not as young as I used to be, and my memory is not quite as good as it used to be. Let's see. And then the last thing I want to mention is item scroller. Now, sometimes in my older streams, you can see me do this, where I'll do like something like that. And just to be clear, that is item scroller doing that. It gives you a bunch of different shortcuts that you can use to manipulate inventories quickly. So for example, it does allow me to shift and drag click to put a bunch of items into an inventory or take them out of an inventory quickly. And I think this mod actually has been removed from the from CurseForge. I'm not sure why. I I'm disappointed in that because I really like the mod. I suppose I'll have to hunt for a replacement the next time I update my game, but it allows me to very, very quickly go over here. Go over here into the input chest for the sorter, and like, so for example, if I took this tuff out, I can alt click on the tuff and very quickly just put it in, and it's no big deal. So that's very important, I think. That's another client side mod, and that is client side only, that I am able to use. So those are the three things, the three sort of quirks about the world that I wanted to mention. And I think that basically covers everything. I did make a list before this, so I made sure to get through all of it, I believe. And yeah, there's very little else that I need to mention here. So I hope that gives you a good summary of what this world is and what I'm working on, and hopefully somewhat why. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else I'd like to mention. I did mention in passing the books down here. There are a few different books. Excuse me. This is a map of the surrounding area that I have not yet set up in a new location. I'll probably do that at some point, but there is the Grand History of GrindCraft. I use this for like really big things, like yeah, the world is created, obviously, pretty big. But you can see the first quarry I completed, and the first Nether quarry I started, and so on and so forth. And then some of the world updates, like 1.18.1. Oh, so this is when this happened, so that's good. And then, yeah, somebody joined the server for a brief period. Yeah, so that's the sort of stuff that goes into the Grand History of GrindCraft. There are some other books here that are not super up to date that I should probably update. But there's also somewhere. Oh, these are. So there was a period where I was writing weekly logs as well, and I ended up feeling like those weren't super useful. I think that's the only other thing I didn't mention really about the way that this world works and like stuff that I've done in the world. But yeah, I just and I guess one other thing, just last minute thing that I've thought of, is I am really the only person in this world. And like you saw in the Grand History of GrindCraft, there are a few people who have joined the server from time to time and helped me with different projects or contributed, you know, little things here and there. For the most part, those contributions are not permanent. Some of them were aesthetic choices that I decided to remove because they were in my base and I didn't want them here. You know, I appreciate the sentiment, but it's my base, like, don't mess with it. Some of them, I think a couple people actually helped me with quarrying at different points. I think for the most part, people only ever really dug a few layers, not necessarily a full quarry. But I think Jason is the exception to that, and I want to thank Jason because, yeah, he did actually help, and he didn't mess with my stuff. So thank you, Jason. But yeah, for the most part, the other people on the server have been like the person who had their base over here, and the person who has their base somewhere down here, which I should probably go and bookmark and put on the map because it's been a while since I've been over there. But they aren't like involved in this sort of core project of digging out these central chunks. So a lot of the work that you see here is just me. And as of right now, the whitelist is basically empty. It's just me, my camera account, who's always sitting down there, making sure that the chunks are loaded and things are being moved. And then I think one of my real life friends is still whitelisted on the server, but he doesn't usually come and join me. So yeah, that's who's on the server. It's mostly just me, and it was a few other people in the past, but I have largely removed people from the whitelist and don't really have anybody helping me do any of this. So it's just me. Anyways, with that, I think I'm gonna come over here and find myself a nice little spot to say goodbye, because we are at 30 minutes, which is a little bit longer than I hoped that this would be. So really quickly, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching the last video. My goodness, I did not expect to get 1,000 views on a video. That's never happened to me before. And just so you know, or just a reminder to do all the normal social media things, like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. You don't have to if you don't want to, you know? It's okay if you don't. But if you like the video, maybe you can like the video. And if you want to see more, maybe you can subscribe. It is a motivating factor for me, by the way. If a lot of you are subscribed, I am more motivated to do videos. And if a lot of you watch a video, I'm more motivated to do similar videos. And if a lot of you like the video, then I'll know that you liked it. And if a lot of you comment on the video, that's when I know what to do next. Well, okay, that laugh perhaps was a little overdramatic, but and finally, I will bring another GrindCraft update out relatively soon. I think maybe next weekend. I'm not really sure. I'm not going to commit to any particular schedule, but as you can see, my quarrying is coming along, so I probably shouldn't leave you all in the dark for very long, but I don't know when it's coming out, but it should be soon. So, thank you again for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!